nostalgia, memories, growing up in Central Florida in the 1990s. What a bunch of sappy crap. It's the Sappy Crap Podcast, starring Steve Bauman and Jarman Day.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Sappy Crap Podcast, where the names are changed, but the stories are real, or at least how our mind remembers them. Quick disclaimer, we're not saying that all the stories we tell here are true. They are just the way they're stored in our mind. They're imperfect, just like us humans. If you disagree, have a different memory, or think we're conflating two things, let us know. We'd be happy to talk about it or retract, so to speak.
Absolutely.
So before we get started, this week's episode was supposed to be the part 2 of our Chorus Kid episode, and we received some feedback that has led me to pull the plug. And Jarman did not have a part of this. I, as the creative, quote unquote, decided that it was for the best, if not for the podcast, for me personally, to not proceed. So before we move on into the real show, and the one about what it meant to go to summer camp, which will be real fun, and that unfortunately a lot of kids don't get to experience this summer. I just have something that I would like to read.
Please do.
So this is to Mr. Johnson, who said he was not going to listen, and maybe he won't, maybe he will. Mr. Johnson, you taught me what it meant to create and collaborate. You taught me that with passion, something can become more than the sum of the people that put things into it. You taught me that anything worth doing is worth trying to perfect and to never settle. You made me cry more than any girl who ever broke my heart. You made me doubt my self-worth and gave me more self-esteem issues than any bully or any note that said fat fuck and shoved into my locker ever did. You taught me what it truly means to fear an adult while desperately seeking their approval. And for me, that is your legacy. The good and the bad. All right, let's move on. Whew.
All right. Thanks for reading that, Steve. I appreciate it. And for listeners that listened to our last episode to know what the context of what that's all about. But we're going to move on to some happier things and to happier pastimes that we can talk about. Nostalgia, that the show's all about, and summer camp memories. But before we get to that, we're going to talk about some feedback and some family that have actually been listening to this episode and to these episodes. And I think Sappy Crap really opens up the Play on Nerds network to more audiences. Everyone can relate to the things we talk about in this show because it's, growing up in the 90s, basically. If you were one of those people, or even, growing up in the 80s, you can probably have a lot of similarities with us. So out of nowhere, I get a text from my half brother, Joe, from North Carolina, where he's living now. And he has been listening to the show, and I didn't know.
Ooh.
So my half brother, Joe, via text said, I thoroughly enjoyed your most recent podcast. And this was the Going to the Movies with Friends episode, the first episode. He says, I was able to identify with so much of what you guys talked about. And he's a little bit older than me, but basically have a similar experience to us that day. I think he's the same age as your brother as well.
10 years older?
Yeah, about 10 years older.
Okay.
And then from him again about the movie date episode, he references our Howard the Duck episode as well of Real Opposition. You should folks listen to that. He says, I was not a fan of Howard the Duck, but I was a fan of Cat in the Hat, which Steve said he had experience in that movie, which is very funny.
I got some experience in that movie.
You should all listen to the date episode because it's quite funny. He says, I can honestly say I've never made out in a movie theater, and I don't think I have either. So you're not alone there.
Boy, have I.
And for our chorus episode, the last episodes, I really enjoyed the recent Sappy Crap. I was eager to learn more about your adolescence, which he puts a little laughing face. But it's funny but true because I didn't meet my half-brother Joe until my senior year of high school. So it was he's kind of actually learning about my adolescence, this time that we weren't brothers, because we didn't really know each other until then. So he's kind of learning about how I grew up. And I didn't even think about that added benefit of doing the podcast. So that was really kind of cool to have that kind of brotherly moment. I don't think he meant that text that way, but it came off that way. So
that's very nice.
Yeah. And sorry, brother, if you didn't want me to read your text in the show, but you should tell me next time if you don't want me to read them, because I'm going to otherwise. So there you go. So this topic, what is this? Summer camp. What's this all about, Steve?
So let's talk about it. Not everybody. A lot of kids have summer camp memories, whether it was a 8-week camp where your parents shipped you off and they took a vacation, or the week sleepover camps or day camps, filled with fun activities, balloon and egg races. One of those is real, I'm sure. Tie-dyeing, terrible crafts, outdoor activities that are dangerous, and in the Florida heat.
Yeah, or at least you've seen movies of kids at summer camps. If you haven't been yourself, you've probably seen a movie about it.
Yeah. So let's talk about our time as campers.
Yes, and I think we should say, generally, my camps, I only have 2 camp experiences to preface this. I have one, which is a regular kind of summer camp you talked about, which was Camp Weewa.
Weewa.
It was run by YMCA. People probably know what that is, but it's kind of like a Christian organization as well. So kind of a Christian camp as well, but more like a regular camp experience. And then I had kind of the day camp, which is more like, glorified babysitting, called at UCF, University of Central Florida, during the summers, because my mom worked there and they had the summer camp for all the employees and stuff for kids who could go there summer camp. And it was kind of just
cool.
Board games, and I'll get more into it later, but it was not a real camp situation, but it was still technically summer camp. There was a pool. But yeah, being a camper. So how long were you actually a camper at camp?
So my early memories, I at one point, maybe it was 7 or 8, did a soccer camp, like a week-long soccer camp.
That sounds terrible.
It was rough. But I'm using it if my dad was the camp nurse that week. So,
oh, cool.
And then I did some sort of other week-long nature camp at some point, maybe in Pennsylvania while we were there. But most of my experiences come from one camp, a United Methodist youth camp in Central Florida, called the Warren W. Willis Youth Camp.
Right. I haven't heard that name in so long.
in Leesburg, but technically Fruitland Park, Florida, really kind of out in the middle of Podunk nowhere on Lake Griffin.
Mm.
And most of my memories, both as a counselor and a camper, are there.
How many years were you a camper for?
I was a camper for 6 years, I believe.
Dang.
And then I did 2 as a counselor.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So yeah, it'll be fun. A good break-in. So my first summer at camp.
Mm-hmm.
So this was summer after 5th grade, after we'd met. My mom was working for the United Methodist Conference at the time, was kind of a bigwig. My mom had a title. She was a director.
Oh.
Director of spiritual formation.
That's the thing.
Yeah. And she had planned a meeting with the director of the campgrounds, a nice guy whose name I believe was Michelle, French gentleman.
Gotcha.
And she scheduled it the same day as check-in so she could take me to camp and then have this meeting. Makes sense. So we're running late. And by the time we get to registration, the line is huge and my mom's late for her meeting.
Mm.
So she starts dragging me to the front of the line and name dropping the director that she's late for a meeting with. And I am super embarrassed and everyone is far too polite to stop her. So we rush through and she says bye and have a good week at camp and rushes off to her meeting. Well, it turns out that in that rush, we completely missed a part of registration.
Mm.
And the part that we missed is the part where you sign up for all your activities for the week.
Oh, no.
So eventually, me and a counselor figure this out when they say, go to your activity group. And I say, what are you talking about? So I get put in the skills that had room left.
Mm.
So I end up having 2 ultimate frisbees, not my style in Florida heat, and 2 arts and crafts.
Were you crocheting?
It was a rough week, let's say. Rough first week at camp. What about you?
Oh, well, so I guess I'll talk about the regular camp for now. I'll have other stories from the faux camp later on, but I think I was only a camper 2 years. So I'll have a little less stories and different kind of stories than Steve, but I just remember all the canoeing, crafts, archery, 22 rifles they had at our camp. They had kids shooting 22 rifles. There must have been some waivers signed or something. And then the dance at the end.
Oh, a camp dance.
Did you guys have a dance at the end?
No, we had a musical thing every week, but there was never any. it was never something that could be turned romantic, if that makes sense.
Okay, gotcha.
In that regard.
And at the UCF camp, where it's kind of a day camp, there was board games, video games. You could sometimes get the Nintendo, which literally had like Nintendo Baseball, like the game that's just called baseball. They had group activities, and that always ended in a talent show at the end of that camp, which later on ended up, I had a ventriloquist dummy at the time. So my last talent show was me having a ventriloquist act that I practiced all week at home. And then I forgot all my lines when I got up on stage, just mortified, and ran away and got made fun of for that. So that was great. So, yeah. But yeah, being a camper, though, I remember my favorite things I found out were canoeing and archery and 22 rifles. Those were that was a lot of fun.
Like classic boy camp things.
Well, and I didn't like a lot of the, there's a lot of like flag football and really physical things.
Hell with that.
I was like, no, but canoeing was peaceful. Archery was a lot of fun. And I was good at the 22 rifles, even though I don't like guns, but I was good at it. And the dance is terrifying, but I'll get into that more later. So what about being a counselor?
Ooh, so being a counselor was a little bit disenchanting, and here's why. So after that first summer, my mom came back. She's like, "Do you want to go back?" And I went, "Nah, I'm good." And she's like, "What if I told you that there's like an acting camp?" And I went, "Okay." And she goes, if I told you it was on the adult side of the camp where you basically sleep in hotel rooms?" And suddenly I went to Creative Spirit Camp. Mm-hmm. And before I had high school theater or had any sort of real acting outlet, for 6 years, I got to go sing and dance, and it was way easier to be a boy. So I always got really good parts for the end of the week performance and a chance to be around girls that wasn't in a classroom.
Yeah.
So, highlights from those years as a camper. Once I bit a hole through my tongue on the second day of camp.
Ooh.
When a counselor knocked me down playing Ultimate Frisbee.
More Ultimate Frisbee.
Going to pool time with creative kids, only to have instead of sitting alone at the side of the pool, it was like me and 20 other kids that refused to go in. It was really refreshing. I had people to hang out with.
Yes, I know how that feels.
And around year 4 or 5, there was sort of this inside group that had been going for a long time, and we were all close. And so, those years, it was cool I was sort of in the inside crowd.
Yeah.
Those older kids, the ones that seemed to have it together. We were like a little camp gang. And so that also, that sense of community, I think was another thing I really remember from that time. But because I did Creative Spirit, then I went to go be a counselor at this camp. 8 of the 9 weeks aren't Creative Spirit. 8 of the 9 weeks are real camp. And it was a little bit disenchanting. I'm not going to lie. I still got to do Creative Spirit, but otherwise I slept rough out in the far boys bunks and walked far too far and had way too many kids to be in charge of. And it was a lot.
And you were there for 9 weeks?
10 with the training week up front.
My goodness. Were you paid for it?
9 weeks of campers. Yes. Not an incredible amount, but when you consider that basically for the entire summer, room, board, and laundry was done for you. It wasn't a lot of money, but probably after all those things, about what I would have made had I worked, some 20 or 30 hour a week crap job back in Winter Park.
And plus, the one thing I do remember is every time you came back from camp, you had a story about the girl of that summer.
Oh, yeah. There was always a girl of that summer.
Mm-hmm.
Always.
Whether there was a kiss that happened or a make out that happened.
I'll tell a story about that later.
Oh, yes.
Not what you think.
As far as counselors go, I was never a counselor, but my sister and my stepbrother really took to Camp Weewa. They were much more outdoorsy and athletic than I was. My sister was a competition cheerleader, and my stepbrother Peter, he was the same age as us. He did all sorts of sports and everything. So they were counselors, and they all had the make out stories, and they all had people they were crushing on. And I always had crushes on the counselors when I was there because I didn't like any of the girls my age, apparently. But nothing ever came of that. But and the counselor at my UCF camp was a former football player for the Bengals. I don't know why or how that happened, but he was the counselor, and he would make fun of me. That was his thing. So he would. One of the things he liked to do was make fun of me for drinking Frescas, because my mom would pack me Frescas in my lunch. And so he's like, "Oh, you're going to have a Fresca and go play some tennis, Jarman." And I'm like, "No, I just like the way it tastes."
I didn't sign up for tennis.
And then he one time came up to me and said, "Jarman," in front of all the other kids, I think you lost something. And I said, "What? What did I lose?" He goes, "Your butt." And so basically I had no butt back then because I was a very skinny beanpole of a kid. This is like even like maybe before even I met you. And he's making fun of a kid for not having a butt, which is also kind of weird looking back as an adult.
In retrospect, this is
very
much
disturbing.
More inappropriate.
So this is my experience with counselors, but the counselors at WeWa were very nice. But it was just the only counselor experience I could possibly give out.
So in the same vein of what you're just talking about, I'm going to start this story and then quickly explain. I'm talking about the time I almost dated a camper.
Oh.
Yeah, we called it DAC, and it was very strictly prohibited. Before I get further into the story, I just want to clarify that the camper was 17. I was 16.
Oh, that's weird.
So questionable, yes. Unprofessional, yes. Illegal, no. Just for the context of the story.
Understood.
So it was Creative Spirit. It was my first year as a counselor, and it was like the 4th week. I'd just done 3 weeks of like regular camp, and I was so ready to be with like my Creative Spirit crew.
Yeah.
Very exciting. So suddenly I found myself in charge of all these kids who I had been a camper with the year before.
Mm-hmm.
It was a really weird shift. And one of these campers we'll call Veronica. Her and I had a flirty, steamy thing that never really went anywhere and had talked over the school year and had even had phone sex at one point junior year. Well, now suddenly I'm her counselor.
Awkward.
Yes. So the first day we have a close call and almost kiss. We're like in that situation. Every guy knows that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I'm on guard. The next day she stays behind in like a props closet and I'm going and doing the sweep of the building and she's there and we have another close call, both through grace of God and the fear of losing my job.
It is a Christian camp.
So I remember the whole week she was wearing like thong and G-string underwear and she was pulling it up way too high. To the point where I remember I had to ask a female counselor to like go talk to her about it.
Yeah. It's a dress code kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. But man, I am proud to say that I controlled my high school body and instincts and nothing actually happened.
That is impressive.
Yeah.
Not where I thought that story was going.
I definitely nearly dated a camper. Absolutely.
Who was older than you.
Who was older than me. But we had been campers together for, 5 or 6 years.
I would have given you a pass.
My bosses probably would not have.
No, that is true. That is true.
Nor Jesus. And speaking of which, this is a good thing for me to bring up. And I want to address this. This was a Christian camp.
Mm-hmm.
I led a small group every week. I had a curriculum I needed to teach. I'm happy to say that this was not a crazy hell and damnation brimstone camp. That is not what the United Methodists are about.
Not speaking in tongues or anything.
No. None of that nonsense. Very accepting, no hell and damnation, no brimstone. We never openly accepted LGBTQ in my time, but they certainly weren't anti.
Right.
And have since come forward as one of the most progressive churches and even went through a big near break of the church a year or two ago over it.
Yeah, because they have gay and lesbian pastors now, I think.
And it's a big point in the church and still continues to be.
And you were a Christian back then.
I was knee deep in Jesus.
That sounds gross.
It was.
No offense to our Christian listeners. We're
no. Yeah. And believe me, I understand better than most.
As you would. You're a pastor for a mother.
But no, I went to chapel. I sang the songs. I felt those feelings.
Right.
And I think you touched on it last episode, that sort of being part of something bigger and letting it overtake you when you're at camp and you're away from literally everything, including your parents. Like it happens. It absolutely happens.
Yeah.
But I also remember, asking kids to dedicate their lives to Christ and fill out like journals and stuff. And I remember the one time, so each week we had a guest speaker that was typically a pastor or youth pastor that came with one of the groups of kids that was there.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we had one that was like brimstone, hell, damnation, brimstone. And I remember all the counselors, like we didn't really know what to do. Like it was not the normal shtick and it was not what
was out of place.
It was out of place. So even then, we knew that wasn't what we were about.
Well, that's
so
good.
In that respect, I'm at least proud.
Yeah, you should be.
I try to teach kids about like the good parts, like fellowship and being nice to people and not being a dick.
Well, that was the parts of Camp Weewa that were, because it wasn't all focused all day all long about Jesus, but there was a mandatory chapel that was too early. And then at night they did the campfire thing, which they would sing awkward campfire songs, which is fine. They'd sometimes be Jesus songs. There'd be a prayer at the end. And so that was kind of like the only thing, but I was already an atheist at this point. I've been an atheist since I was like in 6th grade. So I was like, okay, I'll sit through this stuff and just, check out some girls while I was there. They're all praying with their heads down and I'm just looking around. But it was fine. It just like with yours, it was kind of like a general Christian thing because YMCA doesn't prescribe, I don't think, to a specific denomination or something. It's just general kind of Christianity.
Yeah, they were founded by someone, but who knows?
Right. I think now at this point it's just kind of general Christianity. But mainly it was just camp. It was camp.
Yeah. So now maybe some stories that are distinct to me, but some like how counselor dynamics worked.
Oh.
So in this situation, you're like, take 150 nice Christian kids and you pack them away to camp for 10 weeks.
It's a long time.
A lot of people that you would never look at start looking real good. A lot of girls who would never look at you are suddenly giving the eye.
It's like being in the bar too long.
Jesus is the ultimate wingman, as far as I'm concerned. And both summers, I went to camp with one girl friend and left with another. Both summers.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So there was definitely that aspect of it. But weekend trips to the Goodwill and the Army Navy surplus, coming up with last minute costumes, because there were movie nights on Saturday nights that they'd put on for us. And then we would, whatever the movie was, we'd go and try to like dress a theme for it.
Mm.
So it was Top Gun. We all went to Army Navy surplus and got a bunch of camo and like fake medals and stuff. That sort of thing. Going to the Village's retirement community.
Oh, was that nearby?
It was like a 20-minute drive. But what they've become known for more recently is the retirement community with the highest STD rate in the US.
Oh yeah. People might know that.
A lot of dirty old people. But they always everyone had old collectible cars out every weekend, and you could go and hear live music and dancing. They had the best movie theater in the area.
Oh yeah. The place is huge.
So we would go, and that's where we would spend a lot of weekend time. So this is sort of my best story example of camp shenanigans in their purest, most not terrible form. Like not mean, just crazy camp shenanigans. So on the weekends, most of the guys, after we'd cleaned our cabins, we would go and we would congregate in one of the kids' cabins because they were big, large, like lodge style with big separate bunks and a big central area and a kitchenette. And so you could, 30 or 40 of us would go pack into one of the kids' cabins for the weekend to hang out. All right. It could fit, I think 38 on each side or something like that. Like that was even half full. Everyone had room to spread out. It was real nice.
That's huge.
Yeah. Big camp. And me and a buddy that I'm going to call Mimo. That's not his real name, but that is what I called him. So I'm going to continue to call him that. Me and my buddy Mimo, we're heading to the dorm because curfew's coming. And we get up to the porch and we see this bird just hanging out in a little patio area out front, kind of like a pheasant looking thing. Mm-hmm. So we're watching and some other people come up and they're like, what are you looking at? This bird. So suddenly there's like 7 of us watching this bird just in a circle. And we all say, who knows what kind of bird that is? Get Jared. Jared hunts. He'll know what bird this is. So we get Jared and like 3 more guys follow him out. He doesn't know what it is. Well, go get Bill. Bill was an Eagle Scout. He'll definitely know what this is. Bill and like 6 other guys come. Nah, they don't know what it is. So now we got like 30 guys.
No internet.
Age 17 to 22, just staring at a bird. So then it was born out of the chaos of the situation. The idea suddenly, like it just birthed itself. The idea became, let's get the bird inside. So we open the door and we kind of lightly coax the bird inside and it runs around a bit. We all get a laugh and Mimo says, okay, we got to get it. Catching this thing was like a Hollywood style blockbuster chase scene trying to get this thing. Finally, Mimo gets his hands around it and starts to carry it outside. And the moment he crosses the door, he turned and like a lightning bolt flashed in his eyes. He just says, let's take it to the girls' cabin. All of a sudden, 30 guys and a bird are sprinting across this field at 10 at night to the girls' cabin. So we get up to it. Someone opens the door. Mimo runs in. He drops the bird and he runs out.
Poor bird.
And now we're all just sort of sitting there in this moment where we don't know what we really just did. And we hear this sort of inside, this kind of half murmur. Like, what is that? Is that oh my God. And the girls' cabin erupts.
That's exactly what you wanted.
Erupts with screams. Screams of 30, like, once again, 17 to 22-year-old women. Mimo and us all run back in. It's another Italian Job style chaos scene ensues. And we managed to so then all of a sudden we realize, oh shit, it's curfew.
Mm-hmm.
We have a bird in the girls' cabin and it's curfew. So we go sprinting back across this field. In the darkness, I ran over a tree.
Mm.
And I mean, I ran it over.
Like you tripped over it?
No. So this tree was a young enough sapling. And I was big enough that I literally ran over the tree and killed it. Because we were just running through the dark, not really paying attention. And I uprooted a tree.
Oh my God, that's dangerous.
And we all made it back before we got caught by leadership.
Nice.
That's the important part. But just the cure, like when you're bored and there's no internet, you're right, and you're stuck away somewhere remote, man, you make your own fun.
That reminded me of a story that I didn't remember I even happened. It's not quite related, but just like shenanigans happening in the boys' cabin. So the first year I went to the dance, that at the end, everyone had like Axe body spray and stuff. They were getting all ready for the dance and put on their best little outfit. And this one guy who always got the girls, he was talking about how he had pheromones on top of his cologne. And I was like, wait, what are you talking about? He's like, oh, you buy it online. The internet was pretty new at this point. Buying things online was pretty darn new and sketchy at best. So I remember going back on my AOL account for the next year. I was going to have those pheromones. So I think it was $20. It was the first package I think I ever bought myself secretly, so my parents wouldn't find it. And it got sent to my house, and there's a little tiny vial of probably water. And I remember having it, and I put it on for school. Nothing seemed to happen, but I was so excited to use it for next year at camp. And so I put it on and I was just going to stand there in the back of the dance and wait for the girls to smell me and come on over. And nothing happened.
The thing you need to admit to yourself was, that was definitely urine. It just depends on what kind of urine.
Well, a person must have had a very high water diet because it looked just like water.
Oh, no, they didn't even send you the good stuff. They sent you the watered down urine.
And it smelled like nothing, but it even said in the ad, it's like, it's totally, you can't smell it with the regular nose. Like it's going to their brain centers. It's going to make them crazy. But it was so stupid.
Man.
But I have at UCF camp, there was a lot of bullying going on. I was bullied pretty much my whole childhood. And I thought of this when I was talking about this. We need to actually have maybe a bullying episode at some point.
Oh, absolutely. I thought about that.
Because we both were bullied, obviously. And then on top of the counselor bullying me, who was a full grown adult, which is worse enough, I at one point was on a little league team, which I was terrible. And this
as someone who went to his little league games, I can confirm.
Yeah, I was always in the very back. And apparently this company that makes toilets called Benique or Benique, they sponsored our team. And so I had a t-shirt with our team name on it and Benique on the back. I didn't know what the hell they were. So I get to camp wearing this t-shirt and some kid was like, he's got a toilet shirt on. And the whole rest of that camp, everyone just called me the toilet kid.
It only takes one thing, dude.
It takes one thing. And so that was like that whole camp session was them calling me the toilet kid because I had that Benique. I didn't even know what the fuck it was. So, and the only other experience that really comes to mind from that UCF camp is my Game Boy, the original black and white Game Boy.
Oh, yeah.
It fell in the main fountain at University of Central Florida in the water. And I was so sad.
I remember that fountain.
Oh, yeah. And so one of the grad students there, I don't know how I knew him. I think it was through my mother. She worked with him or something. This an international student. He knew how to take it apart, and then he put it in a thing of rice and let it sit there overnight. And he put it back together for me, and it worked like nothing had happened. And I was so happy. Saved my childhood life. But yeah, and pretty much at Camp Weewa, the best thing I remember is just learning that there are some outdoor things I do like, even though I didn't like camp. I do like the peacefulness of canoeing, being outdoors. I do like hiking, but just I learned the things I definitely don't like. Like I still don't like sports and running around and getting sweaty instead of working out. So yeah, that was kind of it.
That brings me to actually my next story perfectly, which is me also finding something outdoorsy I didn't hate.
Yeah.
So the unspoken rule was that if you were a counselor and you signed up for skills, you were going to get one outdoor skill a week. So you'd get to teach that craft skill, but you were also going to teach ultimate frisbee. That sort of trade-off.
Yeah.
And so we had this nature center, the nature hut. That was just a hut that had, some snakes and turtles and stuff people owned and some bones and a gator head, the nature stuff.
Neat.
And it was a 2-day skill. And the first day we'd go spend the nature hut and kids would touch animals and get to explore things. We'd talk about wildlife in Florida. But the second day was a hike around the camp. And hike is relative because everything was flat because it's Florida. So a walk through the camp.
Yeah.
And on this walk, which was approximately an hour and a half long, because that's how long the skill was. So we had to fill an hour and a half. This was not that long. We had to spew off a ton of nature stuff, Florida nature stuff. So we talked about the difference between venomous, poisonous snakes and all the venomous snakes in Florida. It's like the cottonmouth and the king snake, or not the king snake, coral snake. And there's diamondbacks up in the panhandle. And we talked about moss and the symbiotic nature with the tree and the imbalance in the lake because of the Coca-Cola factory that was dumping stuff. And, we talked about all this. There wasn't that much to talk about. So we ended up making up a lot of stuff. And since I did nature a lot, I ended up sort of setting the script for other people that taught nature. Some of the stories include fluorescent pink wampuscats that came from an orange grove that used to be beside. The purple hippos.
Whoa.
There was an eccentric landowner who had a zoo, and when he died, they just released them, and they're still in the lake. And when kids would ask if they could see them, I'd say, no, they're nocturnal, dummy.
Don't you know that?
Gosh. Those sort of things. And my favorite, and this is something that literally leadership told us we had to stop. And that was the story of the Miller girl. So the camp property used to share a property line with the Miller farm, effectively. Mm-hmm. It might have been an orchard, but a big landmass used for growth. And at some point, the Millers had a young child who died somewhere there, supposedly. And the reason we knew this is because there was a remembrance stone that had been left from the property and was leaned up against the tree.
Oh, so it's actually real. That actually happened.
Sort of. Yeah. So it at least confirmed that a kid died there. That being said, he wasn't buried there. It was like a remembrance stone, and his family buried them at their other house in one of the Carolinas or something. So it was just a commemorative sort of thing so that they could visit something while they were there. And it just turned into this big thing where like the kid went down to the water and a gator got him. But then it became the story of the Miller girl.
Ooh.
And it became the camp ghost story, and it expanded and it grew. And it just became this big enough thing that we were talking about it more than we should have as counselors. And I remember leadership coming and saying, there's no more Miller girl. If we hear anyone say anything, you will be suspended and your pay will be cut.
Because you're scaring the crap out of the kids?
Yeah. And it's because, also we're Christians. So, that there's sort of a middle line on ghosts there.
Right.
But I remember it was easy to get tricked because the moon out there was really, really bright, and we had really old windows in a lot of the buildings. And so because of that, there were those sort of windows that have little waves in them.
Ooh, even spookier. And
so light would catch in, but it wouldn't reflect evenly. So you couldn't see that it was the reflection of the moon. And then it would bounce off of the wall on the window on the far side and do even more weird stuff. So you could walk and look and swear that you saw someone and literally take another step and they wouldn't be there because the light just wasn't refracting into your eyes at that moment.
That's perfect.
And so it was very easy to build this mythos. Yeah. But I do specifically remember telling us to cut it the hell out.
That's really funny. I would suggest everyone watch Wet Hot American Summer, both the movie and the 2 spin-off shows that came on Netflix. They're
yeah,
both
10 Years Later is a little rough, but the original and First Day of Camp are both spectacular.
Yes,
just
they
spectacular.
are really good. But it does feel that way at camp. A lot of the things that seem so goofy in that movie, they actually happen.
Oh yeah.
Well, is that all the stories you got for us? You got a lot more camp time than I did.
Yeah, and as a counselor too, so I've got more clear memories of it because I was a little bit older.
That's true. Yeah, I was younger, and it's kind of faded for me.
The only one I'll tell, and I just thought about it, and we'll call him Jake because him and I still know each other. Jake liked a lot of girls.
Mm-hmm.
And he had like a type, basically. And these girls were really not into him. And so I kind of made it a hobby to get these girls that I knew he liked to go with me to movie night.
Just to piss him off?
Kind of just to piss him off. And 3 of them said yes. And they knew that it wasn't romantically inclined. I knew the score. They knew the score.
Right.
But we still did it. And 2 of them were themed. And I remember one was the Top Gun one, where me and a girl named, Taylor, doesn't matter, went and in camo. And another one where I can't remember the movie was, but me and this girl got this idea that we were going to go to the Goodwill and we were going to go as a cross-dressing old couple. So I was going to go as an old woman and she was going to go as an old man. So we found old wigs and a dress that fit me and like a suit jacket. And we put together a very impressive outfit. And there is still a picture somewhere that exists of me dressed as an old woman next to a very petite girl dressed as an old man.
I could totally see that.
But yeah, just snaking from Jake is probably the best.
I think I know who you're talking about too.
I figured with that last phrase you would.
And also I need to say that there is, I think, this one girl who came from your camp who we hung out with after your camp was out. And then her and I ended up making out. And it was only like the 3rd girl I ever made out with. So I was very thankful to you for introducing me to her.
You'll have to tell me who that was.
I will after the show. But yeah, I was very happy about it.
I'm sure.
So I appreciate that, Steve. I snaked one from you, but you gave it to me, really. So
that's right.
Hey, women aren't snakes, and we're not objectifying women. Women are awesome.
No, in this example, in fact, we are the snakes.
We are the snakes.
Just for the record, in this example, we're the snakes.
We're terrible.
Down in our bellies, under your feet, not good for anything.
So does that wrap up our episode of the Sappy Crap Podcast, Steve?
I think it does. Thanks for joining us for these memories as they exist in our minds. Come back next time. We don't know what we're going to be talking about, but we're going to talk about something that hopefully you can relate to.
Yeah, and also thanks for joining us on this delightful stumble down memory lane.
And don't forget, the good old days weren't always that good.
That's true.
This podcast was brought to you by A Play on Nerds.